Monster Calls by Patrick Ness.
A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness.
Chapter 1.
Chapter 1. Yeah, he does pronounce that right at the end. Chapter 1.
The monster showed up just after midnight.
The monster showed up just after midnight. Yeah, with a southern standard British English accent, you would have heard the monster. The monster showed up just after midnight.
As they do.
As they do. You know, as it's typical of monsters to do.
Conor was awake when it came.
Conor was awake when it came. So, Conor was awake when it came. When the monster came, Conor, the protagonist of the story, was awake.
He'd had a nightmare.
He'd had a nightmare. Oh, I love his voice, you know. He'd had a nightmare, so he had a nightmare. So he had a nightmare before that. Before he woke up, he had a nightmare. That's why the past perfect is used here. He had a nightmare. Yeah, in British English, in Southern Standard British English, let's put it that way, you will say nightmare. Nightmare, not nightmare.
Well, not a nightmare.
Well, not a nightmare. And if you can see, have a look at the book. Have a look at the book. The A, it says, well, not a nightmare. That one, not a nightmare. That one is in italics, right? Can you see that? It's in italics, unlike the rest. That means that the word is meant to be accented, is meant to be stressed. So he says, well, not a nightmare. Not a nightmare. It wasn't just any nightmare. That's what that means. It wasn't just a nightmare. You know?
Well, not a nightmare. The nightmare.
That's just perfect. The nightmare. So the nightmare.
A nightmare. The nightmare.
The nightmare. That means that he's talking about, well, in the book, the author is referring to a very specific nightmare. Not any nightmare. Not just a nightmare that, you know, Conor had one night, but the nightmare. And usually the in English, well, in this case, Liam says the nightmare, because that word is in italics too. And that means that, you know, if you stress the word the, in English, you pronounce it in that way, the. Otherwise, you will usually hear the nightmare, the nightmare with a schwa, you know, the nightmare. And because nightmare begins with a consonant sound, n. That's why you, in connected speech, without stressing the, you will say the nightmare with a schwa. But if you've got the word, for example, the apple, the apple, the apple, because apple begins with a vowel sound, you will say the apple with a short e, you know, with a weak e. The apple in connected speech. But of course, if you do stress the word, if you accent the word the, for some reason, right, you will have to say the. And another case in which you will pronounce this word in this way is when you talk about the citation form of the word. Let's suppose that we're talking about how to use that word in a sentence. So you might say, the word the is used to talk about something you've mentioned before, something that the other person, I don't know, knows to have been mentioned before in a sentence, right? So the word the, and you refer to the word as a word, right? Let's continue a bit more. So this is like before we talk about my friend's book, before the interview, let's talk about this book, which is a bit similar in terms of plot, right? That's why we're talking about this at the moment.
The one he'd been having a lot lately.
The one he'd been having a lot lately. The one he'd been having a lot lately. Okay. So the one he'd been having a lot lately. That means the one he had been having a lot lately. So it wasn't just a nightmare. It was the nightmare. That one. The one he'd been having a lot lately.
The one with the darkness.
The one with the darkness. Pay attention to that darkness. He does pronounce the ra, right? But in Southern Standard British English or modern received pronunciation, you would say darkness. Darkness. The one with the darkness.
And the wind.
And the wind. And the wind. Look at that. The wind. The wind. Not the wind, right? As when he said, for example, he says, the nightmare, right? In this case, he's not accenting, not stressing the word the, but he says the wind with a schwa because, well, wind begins with a semi-consonant. The wa, which is a semi-consonant or semi-vowel too, but semi-consonant is usually called wa. The wind.
And the screaming.
And the screaming. Screaming with this e. The screaming and the screaming.
The one with the hands slipping from his grasp.
The one with the hands slipping. The one with the hands slipping from his grasp. You know, the hands slipping from his grasp. So the hands slipping from his grasp, right? So he's like holding somebody's hand and this is happening, right? It's like you're losing the other person, you know, for some reason.
No matter how hard he tried to hold on.
No matter how hard he tried to hold on. No matter how, well, this is no matter, in British, I'm not going to say in British English because he's Irish, so he does speak with a British accent, but not with a standard Southern British accent, right? So in a Southern standard British accent, you will say matter with a matter or matter, right? Matter, no matter how hard, or no matter how hard. But he says, no matter how hard he tried to hold on.
The one that always ended with.
The one that always ended with. The one that always ended with. The one that always ended with. That word, ended, right? Not ended, but ended with an E at the end. Ended. The one that always ended with.
Go away.
Go away. Go away, right? Go away. So in go away, you will kind of hear a w sound in the middle. Go away. Go away. That usually happens in connected speech, you know. here you've got a kind of w sound that connects both words. Some phoneticians, like Professor Lindsay, well, they claim that the word "o" in British English contains a "wa" at the end already. So you say "go away." The "wa" is already there, right? You don't add an extra "wa." But you will usually hear that there's a kind of "wa" added to connect both words. But anyway, what's important for us is that you will hear that "go away, go away, go away, go away."
Conor whispered into the darkness of his bedroom.
Conor whispered into the darkness of his bedroom. Conor, when a Conor, he will say Conor whispered into the darkness of his bedroom. We can listen to that again.
Trying to push the night. Conor whispered into the darkness of his bedroom.
Conor whispered into the darkness of his bedroom. Whispered, or whispered. He does pronounce that right anyway. I don't get used to it. But Conor whispered into the darkness of his bedroom.
Trying to push the nightmare back.
Trying to push the nightmare back. Right? As he tried to push the nightmare back. As he tried to push the nightmare back. That was what he was trying to do. He was trying to push the nightmare back, right? Pushing it back. Trying to make it go away.
Not let it follow him into the world of waking.
Not let it follow him. Follow him into the world of waking. Right? Oh, we can use subtitles here, I think. Right? There was an option. Anyway. So, whispered into the darkness, his bedroom.
Trying to push the nightmare back.
Trying to push the nightmare back. Okay, trying to push the nightmare back. Okay. Sure if you can see that. Maybe I can do this for you. If you give me 1 second, I can help you have a look at the subtitles. If you want to. We can do this. Okay, there you go. All right, that's a possibility. It is a possibility. Okay. That way you can see the subtitles, I think. Now. Okay. That looks just a bit better. Well, no, I don't think it looks much better, but I'm sorry for this. Okay. I think that will look a bit better now. Yes. Yes, okay.
Not let it follow him into the world of waking.
Not let it follow him into the world of waking. You know, not allowing the monster to follow him into the world of waking. You know, as opposite of the world of sleeping, you know? Or the world of dreams, let's put it that way.
Go away.
Go away.
Now.
Now.
He glanced over the clock his mum had put on his bedside table.
He glanced over the clock his mum had put on his bedside table. Right? So he glanced over the clock his mum had put on his bedside table. Again, had put. His mum had put on his bedside table. Again, the past perfect is being used here because this action happened before Conor glanced over the clock. Okay?
12:07. 7 minutes past midnight.
12:07. 7 minutes past midnight. Past midnight. So in this case, there's something interesting we can point out.
12:07. 7 minutes past midnight.
Past midnight. Past midnight. Usually in this case you wouldn't pronounce the t at the end of past because right after it comes a m consonant, right? And before that there's another consonant, the s consonant. So you've got three consonants together. That's a consonant cluster. The one in the middle, usually a t or the t sound, gets dropped. It's not pronounced. So you say past midnight.
Which was late for a school night.
Which was late for a school night. Here we need a comma, because it's adding extra information. So you will say, which was late for a school night. Right here. So you need a comma there, but let me change the color because you won't see anything if I keep writing in blue. Right here, a comma. So, which was late for a school night.
Late for a Sunday, certainly.
Late for a Sunday, certainly. Or certainly. He does pronounce that right. Certainly. Certainly. Right?
Which was late for a school night. Late for a Sunday, certainly.
Certainly.
He'd told no one about the nightmare.
He told no one about the nightmare. In this case, he does use the past perfect too. He told no one about the nightmare. Right? Nobody knew about the nightmare. Or the nightmare. Nightmare or nightmare, you can say.
Not his mum, obviously.
Not his mum, obviously. Look at that intonation. Not his mum, obviously. Right, not his mum, obviously. Rising intonation, obviously.
But no one else either.
But no one else either. Now that's a falling intonation. But no one else either. Either. He does pronounce, either. In Southern Standard British English, either. Either. But no one else either. But no one else either. Okay, we got, okay, that was something, no, was nothing, okay.
Not his dad.
Not his dad. Not his dad. So he didn't told his dad either.
Their fortnightly or so phone call.
In their fortnightly or so phone call. So in that phone call that happened every 15 days or even or more, around 15 days. That's a fortnight. as a fortnight, right? Usually, well, 15 days. A fortnightly or so phone call. Phone call, right? That's a not phone call, but phone call. That's a compound noun. Phone call.
Definitely not his grandma.
Definitely not his grandma.
And no one at school. Absolutely not.
And no one at school. Absolutely not. You know, at school, I mean, it was out of the question. You know, telling somebody at school was, not a possibility, not an option.
What happened in the nightmare was something no one else ever needed to know.
What happened in the nightmare was something that no one else ever needed to know. Well, look at that. Ever needed to know. Or ever needed to know. Yeah, no one ever needed to know. So what can we say about this? Maybe something no one else ever needed to know. In needed, you've got that long E sound at the beginning. E needed. And the last E is the short E. Needed. Needed. You've got the two E's there. Needed. Needed. To know. To know. And know rhymes with no. Well, actually, no. This is no in terms of, becoming aware of something, or being told something in this case. If you know something, maybe you're aware of something because you've been told something, but the other no, the one you see a no one, that's the negative no, right? So both rhyme anyway. Go, no, and the other no that begins with a k, with a k, but you don't pronounce that one, do you? Anyway.
Conor blinked groggily at his room.
Conor blinked groggily at his room. Groggily. Well, the subtitles here are a mess. Actually, we should go to the dictionary. Let me go here. Groggily. There you go. Groggily. Yeah, groggily. Look at that. Oh, groggily. Groggily in the UK. In a weak way that shows you cannot think clearly or walk normally, usually because you have been asleep or tired or ill. For example, he sat up groggily, right? Groggily with a schwa in the middle. Groggily. He sat up groggily and rubbed his throbbing head. Right? It's like you've just woken up. It's like and you're like this, when you wake up after sleeping for too many hours. You do something, you move, or maybe you look at something in a weak way, that shows you cannot think clearly or walk normally, usually because you have been asleep or tired or ill, or maybe you're too tired of sleeping for too long, or anyway, let's go back to so Conor blinked groggily at his room. If you blink. Okay, as a verb, when you blink, you close and then open your eyes quickly once or several times. And And when an eye blinks, it does this, right? You've got something in your eye. Try blinking a few times like this. Okay, blink. Oh, yeah. That's blink, blink, blink. Anyway, let's go back.
Frowned. There was some.
Okay, let me rewind a bit.
Conor blinked groggily at his room, and he frowned.
And he frowned. And he frowned. Right? Frowned. Look at that word. If you frown, you bring your eyebrows together so that there are lines on your face above your eyes, like this, you know. You frown, often while turning the corners of your mouth downwards, showing that you are annoyed, worried, sad, or thinking hard. Maybe Conor, in this case, was worried, right? Worried or thinking hard.
There was something he was missing.
There was something he was missing. There was something he was missing.
He sat up in his bed, waking a bit more.
He sat up in his bed, waking a bit more. Right? He wasn't fully awake, not yet.
The nightmare was slipping from him.
The nightmare was slipping from him. Okay? If something slips from you, it escapes from you. Slip. Okay, look at this. Slip from someone's grasp. If something slips from someone's grasp, they are close to getting or achieving it, but then they are unable to. Well, I like the second one. If something someone is holding in their hand slips from their grasp, they drop it or lose hold of it. Right? So the ball slipped through his grasp and into the net. Unfortunately, its outside was wet, and it slipped from a grasp, or from her grasp. Okay?
But there was something he couldn't put his finger on.
But there was something he couldn't put his finger on. Oh, I love this because this is a very interesting expression in English. You can't put your finger on something. There is something you can't understand. Put your finger on something. Right? It's an idiom. And it's, well, considered a C2, a very advanced or highly advanced idiom, to discover the exact reason why a situation is the way it is, especially when something is wrong. Right? So let me give you an example. There's something odd about him. There's something odd about him, but I can't quite put my finger on it. You know, it's like I can't really understand the exact reason why that's the case, you know? And especially when something is wrong. There's something wrong about this, but I can't fully understand the reason, you know, of why that's the case. Okay? So that's what can't put your finger on something means. And usually, well, in the dictionary, you'll see it says, put your finger on something, but usually this comes with can't. Can't put your finger on something, okay? Usually it comes with the word, the negative of can. So can't. You can't put your finger on something. And let me check something. All right. Very good. Okay, let's go back. That's a very good idiom, guys, for you to learn. And in fact, we can go to another dictionary. Let me give you another example. So this is from the Longman Dictionary. Put your finger on something. Put your finger on something to know or be able to explain exactly what is wrong, different, or unusual about a situation. I like this definition a bit more than the other. And I can even share an example with you.
There was something about the man that worried Wycliffe, but he couldn't put his finger on it.
Okay, I'm not sure if you heard that, but I'm going to read it to you. There was something about the man that worried Wycliffe, but he couldn't put his finger on it. So in the past, right, you will say could, couldn't put your finger on it. And we've got other examples here too. Look at this. Well, these are not actually. This is not the idiom, is it? Okay, but what they were, she could not quite put her finger on. Okay, that's the expression. Okay, Nightbreed almost does, but fails for some reason. I can't quite put my finger on. Okay? Look at this one. I can't put my finger on it, but there's something different about you. Yeah, I like it. Oh, look at this one. Something was happening amongst the youth movement that so admired him, and he couldn't quite put his finger on it. So usually the word can't or couldn't, and this word too, quite is usually used with this expression. You can't quite put your finger on it, on something. Great. All right, let's go back to the story. So Conor knew that there was something wrong, but he couldn't, he couldn't fully understand what was the cause for that something that was wrong.
Something different, something. He listened.
Something different, something. He listened. That's a.
Straining against the silence.
Straining against the silence. Straining against the silence. Okay, let's go to the definition. Straining. Well, this is the verb, right? The verb straining against the silence. Look at this. Not that one. Strain. Well, this is not what I'm looking for. What about here? Straining. Okay. Yes. So straining against the silence was right. Straining against the silence. Let's have a look at the verb. Straining. There you go. To injure a muscle. That's not the one. To try very hard to do something using all your strength or ability. Yeah, this is the one, apparently. Right? Straining against the silence. To try very hard to do something. She was straining to keep her head above the water. Oh, no, this is the one, apparently. So pull hard at something or push hard against something, strain against. Apparently, right? A dog straining at its lead. Oh, What an awful example. But his huge gut strained against the buttons on his shirt. But let's have a look at the text once again.
But there was something he couldn't put his finger on. Something different. Something. He listened, straining against the silence.
Okay. Oh, right. I think that he was trying to listen to. Okay, to listen, doing an effort. Right? So I think that the one effort, this is the one, number 2, to try very hard to do something using all your strength or ability. Yeah, this is the one, right? Because he was trying to listen, using a lot of effort.
But all he could hear was the quiet house around him.
Okay, but all he could hear was the quiet house around him. But all he could hear was the quiet house around him.
The occasional tick from the empty downstairs.
The occasional tick from the empty downstairs.
Or a rustle of bedding from his mum's room next.
Or a rustle of bedding. A rustle of bedding. Bedding, I think that's what he says there.
Tick from the empty downstairs, or a rustle of bedding from his mum's room next door.
Yeah, bedding. That is the one. So, look at this. Yeah, a rustle of bedding. Bedding, the covers on a bed, or the dry grass, etc. that an animal sleeps on. The sheets, blankets. Okay, this is the one. The sheets, blankets, covers to keep you warm, and other covers that you put on a bed. Yeah. So, a rustle of bedding from his mum's room.
Door.
Next door.
Nothing. And then?
Nothing. Okay, have a look at it.
Bedding from his mum's room next door. Nothing.
Nothing.
And then? Something.
Look at the language being used in the story. This is quite interesting because he's saying, the book reads, nothing, and then something, right? Playing with the idea of being there being there being nothing, but then something.
Something he realized was the thing that had woken him.
Something he realized was the thing that had woken him. Something he realized was the thing that had woken him. Something interesting about this is that if you used these universal pronouns, that's the name for these pronouns, such as something, thing, well, not thing actually, something, nothing. So these are universal pronouns, right? Then you've got general nouns like thing. So all these things, or all these the pronouns, something, nothing, or and the noun thing, they refer to something unspecific, not something specific. So I think that in the story, I mean, they're used with a purpose, right? And the thing is that if we can connect this to the idiom, you can't put your finger on something, right? You can't put your finger on it. So the idea is that Conor, the boy that has just woken up after a nightmare, is like a bit confused, right? Because he hears something. There is something strange in his bedroom, and he can't really he can't quite understand what's going on. He can't put his finger on it. So it's like, there seems to be nothing in his bedroom, but at the same time, apparently there is something, right? But he's not. But now he says something he realized was the thing that had woken him, right? There is something, a thing that had woken him. He doesn't know what it is. It's a thing. Not even a monster, right? Because when you say a monster, you identify something as being monstrous, as being a monster. But if you say a thing, you don't know what it is. It could be anything.
Something was calling his name.
Something. Actually, someone was calling his name.
Conor!
Okay, there's something interesting here.
Something was calling his name. Was the thing that had woken him. Something was calling his name.
Well, that's interesting because Liam says something, but the book reads someone was calling his name. Interesting, right? So, something, because Liam is thinking about the monster, but in the book, apparently, it's someone. Apparently, it's a person. But again, someone is this unspecific pronoun that doesn't refer to, it may refer to anyone, someone was calling his name. And look at that, the italics again. But when you see italics in a book like this, that means, that's being pronounced with emphasis, right? Conor. Well, anyway.
Conor!
I love the way he pronounces that. Conor. Well, actually, Liam Neeson is the one that does the monster's voice in the story, in the film, because of course he's promoting the the film based on the book A Monster Calls, because he is in the film, right? He is actually the monster, the monster's voice in the book, in the story, not in the book but in the film.
He felt a rush of panic as guts
He felt a rush of panic.
twisting. Had it followed him? Had it...
Okay, that's too fast, Liam. Can I do something with you? Oh, for us, actually. The playback speed. Let me do this with you.
Somehow stepped panic as guts... He felt a rush of panic as
He felt a rush of panic.
guts twisting. Had it followed him?
As guts twisting. Right? He felt a rush of panic as guts twisting. Had it followed him? Right? Had it followed him? He's actually asking, did it actually follow me? Right? Had it followed him? That's interesting because the question is in the past perfect. Had it followed him? But, well, Conor is not. Well, he's not saying, had it followed me? No, had it followed him? Anyway, that's the narrator speaking.
Had it somehow stepped out of the nightmare?
Had it somehow stepped out of the nightmare? Right? Had it somehow, we don't know how, escaped from the nightmare?
And don't be stupid.
Don't be stupid. Well, that's something Conor says to himself. Don't be stupid. Oh, let me listen to that again.
Had it somehow stepped out of the nightmare? And don't be stupid.
stupid.
Told himself.
He told himself.
You're too old for monsters.
You're too old for monsters. You're too old for monsters. Right, too old to believe in monsters or that monsters exist.
And he was.
And he was. That means, and he was too old to believe in monsters.
He turned 13 just last month.
He turned 13 just last month. Last month, again, the t in the middle gets dropped because of the three consonants together, s, t, and m. Right? Last month. That's a consonant cluster, and the dropping of the t, that's called ellipsis.
Monsters were for babies.
Monsters were for babies. Monsters were for babies. You know, like saying, oh, monsters were for babies.
Monsters were for bedwetters. Monsters were for...
Monsters were for bedwetters. Right? So, babies, well, you know, wetting their beds. You know what I mean, right?
Conor.
That's great.
Babies. Monsters were for bedwetters. Monsters were for... Conor.
Okay, so he's actually speaking to himself saying, monsters were for babies, monsters were for, or, you know, bedwetters, monsters were for, and suddenly the voice, again, Conor, you know, like a monstrous voice coming from somewhere in his bedroom. Oh gosh. With Liam's voice, I'm already afraid. I'm, you know, of what may happen to Conor.
There it was again.
There it was again. Yeah, the voice. It was, you know, he could hear it again.
Conor swallowed.
Conor swallowed. Meaning like, oh gosh. Apparently, the monster is actually here, right? It wasn't just my imagination. Maybe I was right to believe there was a monster.
It had been an unusually warm October.
It had been an unusually warm October. So it had been an unusually warm. Well, he does say warm October, right? So, but it had been, that means it had been, but had is contracted there, right? So you get it had been. So what he's doing is this. Okay. It actually was, I think, with capital letters. It had apostrophe D. It had been. It had been. It had been. It had been. So to pronounce out, you need an E. It had been. It had with a T, a schwa, and a D. Right? And you get itted. It had been. It had been. It had been. It had been an unusually. Oh, yeah. So this is the same as in, for example, it as in it. It. Yeah, it. It had been. It had been. Forget about this dot right here. Yeah, it had been. It had been. It had been. It had been an unusually warm October. It had been again the past perfect, right? So before this main events in the story, these main events in the story. So the past perfect in storytelling is usually used to tell us, to tell the reader something or about the things that happened before the main events in the story, being told in the story. So this is what happened before these main events in the story.
And his window was still open.
And his window was still open. And his window was still open. Was still open.
It had been an unusually warm October, and his window was still open.
And his window was still open. Was still open. Only one sound pronounced in between was and still. Was still open. Was still open. And his window was still open.
Maybe the curtains shushing each other in the
I just love his pronunciation and his accent. Oh, and his voice. That's so great. Maybe the curtains shushing each other. Let me listen to that again. Watch it again, actually.
window was still open. Maybe the curtains.
Maybe the curtains. The curtains. That ra, fits him so well. The curtains. Maybe the curtains.
Shushing each
Shushing each other.
other in the small breeze could have sounded like.
In the small breeze, it could have sounded like. The small with that low O sound, as in door, right? Door, small breeze with that long E sound, rhyming with words like sea, or I don't know. I don't know. Sea is a good word, The sea. I don't know. Oh, let's see what happens. You see something. Breeze could have sounded like. Could have sounded like. Not could have sounded like, because in this case, this word, the this word right here is there you go. This word right here is an auxiliary verb. And auxiliary verbs in connected speech, usually in spoken English, they are contracted, and you will usually hear of could have sounded like. We can watch that again.
Gone.
Okay.
Pushing each other in the small breeze could have sounded like.
Could have sounded like. Could have sounded like.
Conor.
Could have sounded like Conor. Again.
All right, it wasn't the wind.
All right. It wasn't the wind. All right. It wasn't the wind. Yeah, it wasn't the wind. It was something else, not the wind.
It was definitely a voice.
It was definitely a voice. A voice. Voice. Right, a voice. Yeah. Oi. As in boy, voice. A voice. It was definitely a voice.
But not one he recognized.
But not one he recognized. But not one he recognized. right? Not one he recognized. This structure is, I think, is repeated, appears before, in the story, when he says, when the author says, the narrator says, well, he's talking about the sound or something, and he starts saying, but not this, da, 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 but not this, da, 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 da. I can't remember right now, but I know that this structure is repeated before.
It wasn't his mother's, that was for sure.
It wasn't his mother's, that was for sure. Okay, let's listen to that again.
But not one he recognized. It wasn't his mother's, that was for sure.
It wasn't his mother's. Okay, maybe we can slow it down a bit.
It wasn't a woman. It wasn't his mother's, that was for sure.
It wasn't his mother's.
But not one he recognized. It wasn't his mother's, that was for sure. It wasn't a woman's voice at all, that was for sure. It wasn't his mother's.
It wasn't his mother's.
That was for sure.
That was for sure. Sure, he says, right? Sure. But usually, nowadays in standard Southern British English, the diphthong there in sure in words like sure in other accents in standard Southern British English has been replaced with the monophthong o, and so you'll hear sure. It wasn't for sure, sure, or like the word tour. You will usually hear tour. Actually, tour without pronouncing the ra at the end, or sure. It wasn't for sure at all. And Okay.
It wasn't a woman's voice.
No. What happened? Yeah, normal. That's. There you go.
The wind. It was definitely a voice, but not one he recognized.
But not one he recognized. Yeah, not one he recognized.
It wasn't his mother's, that was for sure.
It wasn't his mother's voice, right? You can do that. You can omit the noun and just leave the genitive case, apostrophe S. It wasn't his mother's, that was for sure. It wasn't his mother's voice. His mother's voice, that was for sure. So that's ellipsis too, leaving out the word because it can be retrieved from what was said before.
It wasn't a woman's voice at all.
It wasn't a woman's voice. It wasn't a woman's voice at all. Right? In Southern Standard British English, you will usually hear at all. Depending on the speaker's accent, anyway.
And he wondered for a crazy moment if his dad had.
And he wondered for a crazy moment if his dad
somehow made a surprise trip from America.
Had somehow, the second time this word appears, had somehow made a surprise trip from America. Somehow, meaning like, somehow, that's a great word. Somehow. Again, these words that imply, look at this, in way or by some means that is not known or not stated. Again, words that imply a lack of knowledge, a lack of understanding, somehow, You know, I mean, somehow, in some way, I don't know. I can't understand. Everything is very confusing. For Conor in the book, in the story at the moment. Okay, guys. So this has been something very interesting. I've always wanted to do this. I've been meaning to do this for a very long time. You know, if you like this kind of content, if you liked this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want me to continue later on, now I will have to leave you, right? And maybe continue later on. Okay? I've got things to do. And anyway, it's been my pleasure to be here. This has been, well, we've talked about a monster calls because by Patrick Ness, because up upcoming, I mean, an upcoming episode on my channel, on this channel, Alex's Adventures in English, is my interview with a good friend of mine, Nicolas Becerra, who's written a book with a similar plot to this one, A Monster Calls. So, see you then, and just let me check something. Yeah, okay. See you later, guys. Bye bye for now. Take care or take care, and see you soon. Bye bye, bye bye, bye bye.